Etepu, Namaste, Assalamu Alaikum, Haru Nefer, and the Tarak. This is Kisanak Maya Keperu with another video for you. And in this video, I want to talk about how you can better understand different tarot decks. Now, if this is your first time to my channel, welcome. Hit the subscribe button to get notifications on when I go live or when I upload recorded videos. Also, please hit the like button. I do have some ebooks that expand more on my teachings and the esoteric. You can click on the links below and download the ebooks and start reading them right away. Again, they're free. If you are not already a supporter of ours on Patreon, consider doing so. As a supporter, you get exclusive access to instructional videos on the esoteric, on how to meditate, how to do divination, work with the oracles, how to invoke spirits, how to do self-hypnosis to rid yourself of anxiety and depression and all kinds of things that are going on with COVID-19. And you also get fellowship with other members on there. And you can be a supporter for as little as $1, $5, $20 a month is up to you. You can cancel at any time. And also you get all your spiritual readings done free as a Osirian level supporter on Patreon. So consider being a Patreon supporter. Lastly, please share this video with family and friends so we can get the revolution started, which means change the vibrational frequency of the planet, shifting it to one more of cooperation and love. So, Haru Nefer, I want to talk a little bit about the different tarot decks because something kind of dawned on me, and I wanted to share this with everyone out there and hope that it will bring some insight into how to work with the decks. Now, there are many different tarot decks. So the most popular and main one is the Rider-Waite tarot deck, and that's what most people start out with. And do I have that here? Yeah, it looks something like this, and it's been popularized over the years, and most people starting out use this deck. But if you go to any occult shop, magical supply shop, what you will notice is that they have an array of tarot decks by different authors. So I want to explain what that's about and how you can better work with the tarot. The first thing you need to understand is the tarot is, it accesses the higher mind. And the way we can explain this is that there's the lower and higher mind. The lower mind can only see the immediate, what's in front of you. The things that really you perceive through the five senses or concrete thinking. The higher mind can see down the road, 5, 10 years down the road. The higher mind is the realm of the subconscious mind, 5D. And tarot in part taps into that higher mind and gives you answers to questions that you pose. But what I want you to understand, it's not a spiritual system per se. It has some spiritual advice in there, but it's not going to have you reach a high level of spiritual enlightenment. For that, you'll need to go to things like the Medunate or the I Ching or Ifa, things like that. But tarot is one of the things that I really love about tarot. There is a wealth of information that's contained within the tarot system. And this relates to if you are into astrology. The tarot relies heavily on astrology. And there is a lost science that hopefully those of us in the esoteric will resurrect. And this lost science is about understanding alchemy. I'm not going to go too much into that and explain it, but understanding how elements mix together to form a higher, more sophisticated element. You know, case in point, when you're looking at astrology, you can say that, for example, the tarot, the sun is in Saturn, things like that. And that has a specific meaning, and the two combine to give you a third energy, which you can read into. Now, this is contained, this higher form of alchemy and understanding astrology is contained within the Bible. Unfortunately, because the Bible is based on astrotheology, unfortunately, the way it's being used today by these Christian ministers who, I don't want to get into it, but don't know anything, they're only reading things on a very concrete, superficial level. You know, so which is based primarily on left brain thinking. See, left brain thinking is your concrete thinking. It also is a segregated faculty. It looks to separate, label, and define. The right brain is synthesis thinking. It looks to congregate, bring things together. It's the problem-solving faculty. It's the seat of morality, the right brain. So when you are doing your readings, you are tapping into your subconscious mind. And Carl Jung called these archetypes. You're tapping into the subconscious mind where there exist these archetypes. There's the archetype of the father, archetype of the mother, archetype of the wizard, the fool, things like that. And so you're accessing that wisdom and knowledge from the subconscious mind. And what you're doing is you're revealing to yourself the answer to your question. And it's codified in the tarot cards. So you're picking a card based on what the subconscious mind is working through you, the spirit is working through you to select specific cards to give you a specific answer. Now, what I want you to understand, and the reason why I was going into the higher and the lower mind, is that tarot is dynamic. It works through the right brain. It is not, it does not work on a paradigm. That's how the left brain works. The left brain is not very good at inventiveness, creating something new. It has to have a precedent. It has to have something to look to reference, to look back upon. So for that, you need the right brain. Now, when you're working through that faculty, that dynamic faculty, it's intuitive. And in fact, it knows it's speaking to you. You know you speaking to yourself, because within you is God, consciousness, God, Oser, as we call it in the Kemetic tradition. So you are asking the Oser within you for an answer to a question, and then you're being directed to pick a card to give you the answer you already know, but you have to put it into a form where you can read it in the fourth dimensional plane. Now, with that said, I want you to understand this. Now, here's where it gets very interesting and tricky. The tarot is bouncing off of you. It's interactive. It's pinging you, if that makes sense. In other words, that it's responding to your thought process. And it's changing. It's not going to be the same. It is changing. And it's also accessing the collective consciousness of the human race, the group, to give you an answer. All right. And I'm going to give examples of how it's doing that. All right. So although many tarot readers will rely heavily upon what we call a spread, like the Celtic cross spread, there are many spreads. There's a 5-card spread, 3-card spread. And there's also spreads that you can create that have meaning to you. Because again, we're dealing with the right brain, which is dynamic. It's creative. It's the seat of invention. All right. So you can sit down there and you can create a spread, and you can assign meanings to any one position on your spread. You can say to yourself, position number 1 represents the past. Position number 2 represents the future. Position number 3 represents the subconscious minds. Position number 4 represents the conscious mind. Position number 5 represents the animal nature. And then when you start doing your readings, asking questions, and place those cards in those assigned positions, the intelligence will know what the intelligence within you will know the positions of those assigned positions and give you readings based on those positions. So it's dynamic, it's interactive, it can change depending upon what meaning you give those positions. Now, it can also change in terms of what meaning you give a card. Each card has an assigned meaning. If we look at the Chariot here, well, throughout the ages, the Chariot has come to mean specific things. And this is an archetype that exists in the collective consciousness of the human race. So it does have a specific assigned meaning because it exists in the ether. And it's been empowered like a sigil based upon how many tarot readers have been working with it. But however, you can override that and you can add a meaning to it. You can say to yourself, well, I understand this could mean victory, but for me, it can mean steering 2 different directions. If you wanted to mean that and it's close to you, then your indwelling intelligence, the SERO within you, will assign it that meaning. And when you go to pose a question, it will give you this card with the specific meaning you assigned to it that answers your question, if that makes sense. So what I'm saying is to you is, although all the cards already have assigned meanings, it can, to a degree, be overridden by you. If you tend to say, well, yes, the tower looks like, it looks really, really bad, but it also could mean just a changing of the guard. It could mean something that's just being broken down to make room for something new. And if you approach it from that positive aspect, then this is not going to be a negative card for you when you pull it in a spread. That makes sense. And it's similar to a Rorschach test. Now, a Rorschach test is basically an ink blot test. Some psychologists use it. You have a card with an ink blot there, and they ask you, what do you see? Now, there's no right or wrong answer, but depending on what you say reveals a lot about what's going on in your subconscious mind. If you talk about how negative it is, like, oh, it looks like a demon coming to devour me with teeth, then the psychologist knows that, oh, you've got a lot of things going on. You see the world in a very negative view. If you look at it and you say, well, I see a phallus, I see breasts, I see vagina, then they know you have a lot of sex on your mind, you know? So the cards can have a deeper meaning to you, an assigned meaning for you, if that's what you want, or you can go with the default meaning, which is, encoded in the deck itself. We have the Two of Pentacles, meaning balance, and also they have the reverse, which is when it comes up in the reverse position. But this is what I want to really speak to in regards of overriding the traditional meanings of the deck. Now, you should pick a deck that you're comfortable with, meaning that you should look at the artwork and see and look at it and see how it speaks to you, if it vibes with you. And then based on that, pick the deck. But you also should look at the iconography, the symbols on the deck, and see if they speak to you, because those symbols in the artwork are very important. And you should try to interpret those if you can. All right. Here's an arena where I see some tarot readers making a big mistake, making a very big mistake. And this is what it is. As I said, there are a bunch of different tarot decks that you can go out there, explore, you can purchase, you can have fun with. Again, the artwork is different. Find something that speaks to you. And there are a bunch of different tarot books available as well. There's a ton of them, and you just pick a book that really interprets the cards the way that speaks to you. But now here's a mistake that hey, Clifton Davis, Davidson, you just distracted me by that. Annette Chirac, Shechem Kasang. Thank you very much. Duawu, Duawu. What's your question? Let me see your question real quick. Have you read Shechem or Shechem's Rahu Nefer's book, Oracles of Thoth? No, I haven't. I know he published that book. Not published, I'm sorry. I know he wrote that book. I think I have it in my library. I would have to check, but I haven't read that yet. But yes, I remember him writing a book on tarot. In fact, him and I talked about that. We had spoke about that because I asked him, I said, hey, did you write a book on tarot? And I was like, I'd like to get a copy of that. So I think someone there had made a copy for me or something, because I don't think he publishes it anymore. But anyway, I digress. Let me get back to the point. So here's the tricky part. You have some tarot readers that will get a tarot deck. This is one of my favorite decks by SERO Marchetti. I love his artwork. So any decks, he comes out with multiple decks. So most times when he comes out with a deck, I'll buy the deck because I really love the artwork, like I said. But here's where most tarot readers go wrong. They will pick a deck, right? And they will do a reading and then use the standard meaning to interpret the reading. Now, that's well and good. That's fine. You can do it that way. It works. And they're really using the Rider-Waite tarot deck, the meanings of the archetypes and the iconography from that deck to superimpose over a different deck. if that makes sense. But here's where things go wrong in doing that. And I'm going to preface this by saying this. I went to the I Ching Oracle and I asked the I Ching Oracle about my person working with different tarot decks. And it was a very interesting reading. Of course, the I Ching said, yes, you can work with different tarot decks, but be careful not to get caught up, which it revealed the 22nd hexagram. So I don't know if you are familiar with the I Ching. 22nd hexagram it discusses the form and function, that there needs to be form and function. So the I Ching was speaking to me, and it was saying that you must make sure that you get a deck that has iconography, archetypes that have good meaning in them, and not something that where an artist just took crazy liberties with it, and it doesn't really mean anything, because that's not going to work. That's a form without substance. That's what the 22nd hexagram is talking about. So that really hit home for me. That I really understood what it was saying. And then it kind of crystallized when I started seeing different tarot practitioners using different decks, but still using the standard interpretation for the cards. And that's okay, but that's not what you should be doing. So let me give you an example. Here is the Rider-Waite Tarot deck. This is the Four of Pentacles, all right? And here's SERO's card, the Four of Pentacles. You'll notice that they're very, very different in terms of look. You have a ship here, and this is a merchant holding one pentacle, and then he has like a chest there and a globe there. And here, you don't see any of that. In fact, in the background, you may see a city, all right? Now, SERO went through a lot of work to create the iconography for this. And he assigned it very specific meaning, from the treasure chest to the globe to the ship in the background where there's no sails, but the merchant and everything. If you go with the standard Rider-Waite Tarot meaning and superimpose it over this, it will work, but you're missing on so much more information that SERO embedded in this card. Hence, which is why when you're working with different tarot decks, they come with a book. And the book is by the author of the tarot deck, where he or she goes through every card to explain the iconography, the symbols, and the meanings of these symbols and iconography are far different, in some cases, not all, than what you have in your traditional Rider-Waite Tarot deck. So the idea that you can just use these different decks as interchangeable and just go with the standard definition is not entirely correct. You must acquaint yourself with the author, artists, what have you, the meaning that they embedded into the card. All right? This could talk about someone who's very covetous, who's stingy, who doesn't want to share, who holds on to their wealth. This is an individual who's ready to do trade. You understand? So he's open, ready for business. Not that much of a difference, but enough to make a difference. So you need to understand and say to yourself, wait a minute, the author took time to create this artistry, these symbols in this card, so I need to abide by that, because that is already, because the artist in creating that has, on a subconscious level, uploaded that to the collective consciousness, and it becomes an archetype for his deck or her deck. And in using his or her deck, you should be downloading that information and interpreting it as such. Another example, Rider-Waite Tarot deck for the Two of Cups. Here's SERO's, lovers. Did I say that right? Oops, sorry. I think I got the cards mixed up there. This is the Two of Cups, and this is the lover. Sorry, two different cards. My fault. Let me see if I can pull that real quick. Two of Cups, because I want to show you the difference in just the artistry here. Give me 1 second. But I hope that makes sense to you, that you need to start abiding by the symbols within the card itself. Because if the artist created a deck and they went through the trouble of creating the artwork and creating the symbols, then obviously there's a meaning there for you. So you should try to abide by that meaning. Let me see if I can find this. Darn it, it's not in my deck now. Where the heck is it? All right, here we go. Now we're on track. Let me go back now. 2 of Cups in SERO's deck and 2 of Cups in Right Away. Notice that there is a big difference in the artistry. You have cups with a hand coming to cups with hands coming out, and also, if you want to interpret, you can see like a black and white hand, which means the mixing of different elements, different cultures, and these two are pretty much from the same racial background, nationality, and all that. And so these are key things that you need to look at and work with those symbols and interpret them and understand the difference and understand that the artist has put them in a deck for a reason. All right. And that reason may come up in your spread. It may pop out there and it will speak to your question. And if you're not well versed on the interpretations by reading the author's book, you will miss out on that meaning that the deck is trying to communicate to you. All right. So there's various different depths and meanings that you can gather from this. Now, as I said before, if you want to just abide by the traditional interpretation, like 2 of Cups, Lovers, or 4 Pentacles, you can do that. But I do think that you're not going to get an accurate interpretation as you should if you were to interpret the artist's symbols and meanings and metaphors and all of that good stuff. All right. So yes, going out there and picking a deck that speaks to you from a creative perspective, from an iconography perspective, is good. But make sure that if you're going to work with that deck, that you do read the author's book on the interpretation of each card and understand what that author was trying to, the meaning that that author was trying to embed in the card itself. Because that's going to make a big difference in terms of the final outcome and the answer to your question. All right. So I hope that makes sense. And again, this is going back to the right brain. And in the right brain, the beautiful thing about the right brain is that it's fluid. It is not static. It just doesn't, say, this is the meaning and that is it. Open to no interpretation. No, it is open to interpretation. And you can look at this in terms of life, how in this Western world we live in, we are a product of this left brain learning, meaning that it's very, very static, very rigid, and it's not flexible. However, I think people are now beginning to realize that that's not the best way to be as a society, especially for educational institutions, when everything is so rigid and straightforward, and that's it. If I may make a case for what I'm saying here, so you will really understand. If you just look at how much of a problem that modern ministers have caused by using the Bible and reading it as a history book versus a book that contains rich symbols and analogies. Think of the science that our ancestors left coded in the Bible as astrotheology that we are not learning, that we're missing out totally. Like no one is telling you that the reason that you associate the fish and water with Jesus so much is because that's the age of Pisces. You're never going to understand that or know that, because the ministers, all they want to do is treat it as a concrete reference book that has to be interpreted literally. Therefore, you're missing out on the occult wisdom and science. And the word occult just means hidden. That doesn't mean anything bad. Occult means hidden. The wisdom and the science that contained within that book. And I've always said this, that the Bible has a lot of wisdom and knowledge if you stop using it as a history book and you start to understand that it was put together or plagiarized from Kemet, the ancient Egyptians. That's why you have Jesus relates to Osir, Mary relates to Isis or Set. But all of that is just gone, and we're not learning the science. This is why I embrace tarot, and I love tarot, because in a way, it touches upon that science, because the cards don't just have analogies and symbols and things of that nature, but it encodes within it astrology, and you learn about that. All right, so I hope that you have taken a lot from this video, and I want to thank you all for stepping in here. And just remember, if you're going to pick a deck, make sure that you become very, very acquainted with the artists, their interpretations in terms of the symbols. They've included it in each card, and know that, because it's going to come up in the readings. And if you're not schooled in the interpretation of those symbols, you're going to miss out on what it's trying to tell you. So I want to thank you. This is Kasak Maha Keperu, son of Ma'at and Tuti. Ma'at is the beautiful goddess Heteru. Until my next video, Amun Ra.